Hello and welcome to BBC News. I'm Rachel Armand. Officials have postponed one of the biggest football matches in Argentina's history. The bus carrying one of the teams was attacked by rival fans, injuring several players. The final of the South American Club Championship, the Copa Libertadores, was due to take place in Lima, 2 driving from Buenos Aires.
They should have been cheering on their team in the historic football final. Instead, the supporters watched earlier, River Plate vandals While the match now looks set to go ahead on Sunday, there are still concerns about more violence and other scenes.
The British Prime Minister is in Brussels ahead of Sunday's historic EU summit to formally approve the draft Brexit deal. Theresa May has insisted the UK will always stand by Gibraltar. She was speaking after Spain dropped its threat to boycott the summit. The EU says it will now go ahead and the UK's withdrawal deal is expected to be agreed by all leaders. Here's our Europe correspondent Adam
talks to secure Britain's departure from the EU. Theresa May ushered into the European Commission for the second time in a week. Not to negotiate, that's over, but to shake on the final deal. And was that a smile of relief? Derailed at the last minute. Hours earlier, her ambassador to the EU had written a letter reiterating how Brexit was wrong, reassuring the Spanish Prime Minister enough dropped his threat to boycott tomorrow's summit.
Spain has reached an agreement on Gibraltar. The first thing that is resolved is that the European Council is therefore going to be held tomorrow.
Arriving for her next courtesy call in Brussels, the Prime Minister said it was a clarification, not a cave-in.
The UK's position on sovereignty of Gibraltar has not changed and it will not change. I believe that Gibraltar is for Britain, and I will always stand behind Gibraltar.
This process has lasted for 18 months. The Prime Minister's had to shuttle backwards and forwards. Two Brexit secretaries started with a blank sheet of paper and ends with a Brexit deal more than 600 pages long. It's brought us a withdrawal agreement that fixes the divorce terms by guaranteeing the rights of all nationals in the UK and Brits in Europe, settling the UK's financial obligations, estimated at £39 billion, with an insurance policy to avoid checks on the Irish border. There's also a roadmap to the future relationship, one based on free trade, not necessarily the frictionless trade promised by the Prime Minister, with continued cooperation on security and unlimited migration from the EU. Free movement will come to an end. While Theresa May has breakfast here tomorrow, her fellow leaders will rubber stamp their side of the bargain. Then she'll be shown into the room. History made before Sunday. Adam Fleming, BBC News, Brussels.
There is more on Brexit with analysis and research from our correspondents and editors, all on our website, bbc.com/news. Stories now. The President of Zimbabwe says his predecessor Robert Mugabe is in Singapore receiving medical treatment and is now unable to walk. It's exactly a year since Mr. Mugabe was forced to resign during his last few years in office. He made several trips out of the country for unexplained health reasons. Deforestation in Brazil's Amazon region has reached its highest level in a decade, increasing by nearly 40% last year. Nearly 8,000 1,000 square kilometres, the world's largest rainforest, was destroyed between August 2017 and July 2018. The police in Paris used tear gas and water cannon against protesters who want President Macron to drop an increase in the tax on diesel. 130 people have been arrested across the country. Diesel is the most commonly used fuel in French cars, and the cost has risen significantly over the past 12 months as part of the president's drive against pollution. Mr. Williamson reports.
This a reminder for France's president. Sparks can quickly ignite into flames. The Champs-Élysées not a tourist site today, but an unofficial battleground. Protesters armed with paving stones pushed back by tear gas. Riot police. This movement is about more than fuel prices. Its supporters tired of taxes, tired of politicians. Their slogans threatening revolution. The French authorities, a joke to some.
We have to pay for rent, food, insurances and telephone. What's left at the end of the month? Nothing. I don't want Macron to just cut taxes. I want him to resign.
Why is it always the little taxpayer who has to pay? We've been tightening our belts for 30 years. If it gets any tighter, we're going to explode.
The government banned protesters from this street today, pointed them to the Eiffel Tower instead. The far-right leader Marine Le Pen questioned why. The government says she's encouraging dissent.
The ultra-right is mobilized and has answered Marine Le Pen's call. They want to attack institutions. They want to attack governing MPs.
The government said no protests on this street, and look what happened. They say ultra-right elements are responsible for the violence here, but many ordinary people say they also support this movement.
This protest has brought together people from all political backgrounds, all parts of France. But it's a movement with no national leader, no formal structure. Its membership and its identity hard to control. Tonight, with protests dying down, the government has said it's listening, but there's no sign yet it's changing course. Security forces can clear the barricades, but political resistance is far harder to quell. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Paris.
The leaders of the incoming Mexican government say they're still discussing how to deal with migrants travelling to the United States, following reports that a deal had been reached with the Trump administration. The Washington Post said Mexican officials had agreed to let migrants trying to enter the US stay in Mexico while their asylum claims are heard. But the incoming Mexican foreign minister denied that any decision had been reached on the issue. A convoy of almost 3,000 Central American migrants has reached the Mexican border city of Tijuana, hoping to gain entry into the US. BBC's Will Grant is on the line now from that border city, Tijuana, in Mexico. Will, thank you very much for joining us. First of all, is it likely that Mexico will agree to keep these migrants for perhaps the many years it will take to process their claims?
It's a really good question, and one that I guess we're all asking ourselves on one step. I mean, what's happening is that you have the handover of power taking place in Mexico basically at the same time as this caravan has arrived. Perhaps in part that was the intention to come during this period of transition. So, you know, you mentioned there the incoming administration are the ones who are being asked whether or not they would accept this deal from the United States, from the Trump administration, under which essentially immigrants seeking asylum would stay in Mexico while their applications were being processed rather than stay in the United States. That would be a huge concession by the incoming Mexican president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, but it might be one that he measures as domestically doable, that he can do that and not necessarily lose votes or support in Mexico.
You're in Tijuana. Can you give us some idea about what it's like and how the city is coping with those many migrants?
In a sense, I think it's fair to say the pressure is growing. The migrants themselves are growing increasingly tense. The situation is getting more and more difficult. Food rations are fewer and fewer. And the migrants are arriving in slowly, gradually catching up. So you have one main caravan that we've been travelling all the way down from the border right here to the border. And the later caravans are now catching up, and they are also staying in the same space. So that space, every square inch of it is taken up by cheap tents, tarpaulins. There are children running around, and it is a very, very difficult situation, as I say, because the resources are so thin.
In terms of the political situation, you told us a bit about the incoming government, but what kind of person is the new President Lopez Obrador? Is he pro?
Well, traditionally, absolutely, he is, yes. He says that, of course, these things are a result of poverty, which is something he wants to tackle in his own nation here in Mexico, as well as help governments of Central America to tackle their issues. He's a left-winger, and he has traditionally always stood for migrant rights. So it comes as something of a letdown, I would say, for his traditional supporters to see him already potentially giving this to Trump. He would want on this very emotive issue of this caravan. But as the incoming foreign minister, Marcelo said, there is no deal done yet. We're going to meet again on Sunday, and we'll see if they come up with anything concrete then. And in the meantime, migrants are beginning to walk to the borderline itself in protest too. So there is potential for another flashpoint here in Tijuana.
Will Grant in Tijuana bringing us right up to date. Thank you very much. The leader of Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party, which props up the British government of Westminster, has urged Theresa May to focus on getting a better deal. Adding for us to talk at AP's annual conference, the party should work for what she called an improved outcome. From Belfast is our Ireland correspondent, Bob.
This is the most closely watched conference in the party's history. Northern Ireland's DUP, whose support for the government depends on, are poised to vote against Theresa May's draft Brexit deal.
This draft agreement fails her own The Prime Minister has not been able to guarantee an outcome that eliminates the risk of the introduction of the so-called backstop arrangements. Now, on the one hand, we're told that the backstop would be the best of both worlds. And on the other hand, we're told we're not going to need a backstop.
The backstop is the EU's legal guarantee to prevent a hard Irish border. But within the DUP, it's vastly opposed. And look who's become an ally. Boris Johnson was in Belfast to lend his support, saying it was the confidence and supply arrangement with the DUP from Jeremy Corbyn out of Downing Street.
That we keep this partnership going. We keep this supply arrangement going.
If the so-called Irish backstop was to be used, Northern Ireland would remain fixed to EU rules, even after the rest of the UK goes its own way. Many Northern Ireland businesses are supporting the deal, but they're at odds with the DUP, who say it undermines the integrity of the UK.
Well, I think that's an argument no one in the business community in Northern Ireland accepts. It's very seldom that you can see unanimity about anything. In fact, you can find that every single business organisation is telling you about something different. And I think the DUP should take cognizance of that.
But the DUP see this as their moment to stand firm. They are backing down.
Never before has this party been so convinced that they can slide up by Boris. Now they have the backing of Brexiteers in Westminster. The party continues Belfast.
BBC News, our main story this hour. One of the biggest matches in South American football, the Copa Libertadores final, has been postponed after Rugby carrying the Boca Juniors team was attacked in one final. Let's get more on that story now. Our South American football correspondent Tim Vickery joins us now. Tim, thank you very much for your time. First of all, how unusual is it for something like this to happen?
Well, unfortunately, I have to tell you that this isn't a great surprise. It's a disaster, really, for South American club football. In the glorious history of South American club football, this match is, I think, the biggest thing that's ever happened. It's got the biggest global audience has ever watched a club game between two South American sides. And I'm afraid you've come into our house and you've seen everything in a huge mess. There are real problems with South American societies and South American football, and some of them came to the surface. And what we saw with the attack on the team bus of Boca Juniors is perhaps in part football hooliganism. It's also in part corruption and corrupt values of a society moving in the wrong direction. The organised groups of thugs in Argentina, it's not just hooliganism, it's business. They make their living from being thugs. They get a cut from players' wages, a cut of the transport deals is sometimes alleged, and they make money from ticket sales on the black market. And one interpretation of the violence that we saw is that the organised groups of thugs were responsible because one of their touting operations, and they could make a fortune on the black market selling tickets for this game, one of their touting operations was interrupted, and this was their revenge, this was their response. So totally inadequate for coordination of their security, and it's obvious that the route of the Boca Juniors coach on the way to the stadium should have been cordoned off at key moments. It's also, it was clear, well over an hour before the scheduled kick-off, that this game really shouldn't have gone ahead. Players have been injured, players' safety should surely be paramount, and the players there of Boca Juniors were not in physical or psychological conditions to play this game. And yet it took hours and hours and hours for a final decision to be reached, and it was the clubs who pushed for this decision to be for the game to be put back 24 hours. To the shame of the authorities in this part of the world, they were trying to get the game played. The kick-off time kept on being put back and back and back, and in the end, over 2.5 hours after the scheduled kick-off time, more than 3.5 hours after it was clear that the game shouldn't take place, it was announced that the game would take place instead on Sunday. Now, I have to tell you that there's already a doubt with that. The local council in Buenos Aires has banned River Plate Stadium because it exceeded its capacity for Saturday's match and emergency exits were blocked. Now, that should be negotiable. River Plate should be able to pay a fine and ensure that the game goes ahead on Sunday. But at the moment, it's not 100% confirmed. So I'm afraid it just gets deeper and deeper.
Wait and see what happens on Sunday. Tim Vickery, our South American football correspondent, thank you very much. Now, voters in Taiwan have rejected same-sex marriage despite a ruling by the island's top court last year that the ban was unconstitutional. In polls to elect local leaders held at the same time, the governing Democratic Progressive Party said it President Tsai Ing-wen stepped down as head of her party to accept full responsibility. Voters said they would
Ancient Egyptians mummified humans to preserve their bodies for the afterlife. One was named Thea and was from the 18th Egyptian dynasty, whose most famous pharaohs include Tutankhamun and Ramses II. It's the first time Egyptian authorities have opened a sealed sarcophagus before the international media. The discovery was made by French mission in the northern region of El Assassin, alongside other significant finds.
In 2015,
The other two from 4,000 years ago belongs to Laura the overseer of the mummification shrine, along with 1,000 miniature figurines of serpents, which ancient Egyptians believed would serve the dead in the afterlife. The archaeologists removed 300 meters of rubble over 5 months to uncover the tomb, which contains coloured wall scenes depicting the owner and his family. So far, Egypt has revealed over a dozen ancient discoveries this year. Sadama Haidari, BBC News.
One of Britain's and the world's most original film director, Nicholas Rowe, died at the age of 90. He had a career spanning 6 decades and was celebrated for his original and controversial films, including Don't Look Now, Performance, and The Man Who Fell to Earth, back at his
Julie Christie and Don Sutherland in Nick Rogue's It was sumptuous, eerie, hypnotising and unsettling. He was a cameraman before he was a director. Here he is on the set of Fahrenheit 451, filming Julie Christie. He was director of photography on Dr. Zhivago, who fell out with the director, who sacked him. His replacement won an Oscar, partly for Rogue's work. His first film as director was Performance, with Mick Jagger as a rock star and James Fox as a gangster. It included graphic scenes of violence, sex and drug taking. The Man Who Fell to Earth featured another musician, David Bowie, with a sprawling work of science fiction. He could be driven. On one film, the crew threatened to walk out when he filmed for 24 hours non-stop. But no other British director could match Rogue's visual imagination, or his skill at wrong footing, bewildering and delighting audiences.
Nicholas Rowe there, who's died at the age of 90. NASA's latest due to arrive on the red planet Monday. Everything looks set for the lander to touch down just before 8 p.m. GMT. Though landing on Mars is something that's become really hard. It's not an easy feat. Success depends on the
Our small island continues to reveal an epic history. We're literally discovering an extraordinary monument as old as Stonehenge. A vast hoard of ancient coins, and a radically different view of our barbarian ancestors. The very latest discoveries are changing history. Starts Wednesday at 9 BBC
Here's the headline. One of the biggest football matches in Argentina's history, the Libertadores, postponed after the Boca Juniors team bus was attacked by rival fans due to play Theresa May has written an open letter to the British public urging people to back the Brexit deal. The plan was finalised with the European Commission President Jean-Claude ahead of a historic summit on Sunday, but faces widespread opposition. Tear gas and water cannon dispersed calling for an end to field demonstrations. Protests by grassroots movement under the government and the election blitz have been held across France with back to Britain in the morning here on BBC News. It's time for
Hello and very warm welcome to Dateline London, bringing together in debate leading UK commentators with foreign correspondents who file their stories for the Dateline London. In today's programme, Theresa May exercises her muscles in Brussels this weekend with the knockout blow to her Brexit deal delivered in Westminster. There's a gulf opening up between the West and the Gulf states, and as the British Museum lends to Nigeria valuable stolen bronzes, it's time to hand back the loot of empire. With me, Janet Daly, columnist for the Sunday Telegraph, Nabila Ramadani, who reports widely on the Arab world, the US broadcaster Michael Goldfarb, host of the podcast The First Rough Draft of History, and Belgian journalist Mark Roche, of the magazine Now, weekend in Brussels for Theresa May, she and the leaders of 27 other countries sign off on the UK's divorce from the European Union. Mrs May has been fending off last-minute objections, partnership countries like Spain and France hoping for further British concessions, because only a majority of EU countries would approve the deal. In all likelihood, the Brussels side will then bring smiles and handshakes. Back in London, though, the withdrawal terms faced a much tougher audience. The former Brexit secretary and enthusiast for leaving thinks the terms are worse than staying in the European Union. In support of the Democratic Unionists, a party from Northern Ireland, on paper, the Prime Minister has a majority of the votes for the House of Commons. Just. The UP won't back the deal, and 80 of her own Conservative MPs have already said publicly what they say. Well, if we were to go back to the European Union and say people like the deal, can we have another one? Mrs May says, right, they're going to come and say to us, all right then. Now, Mark Roche, is the deal can't get through at the Westminster Parliament to decide a bit?
Well, the first thing is that, as Theresa May said, is take it or leave it. This is the only deal to leave the European Union and at the same time keep a link. So, the Brexiters are happy they leave the European Union, and the Remainers somehow are happy also because for many years they will remain through the customs union. No, Britain has no choice. This is a good deal, it's a compromise deal. It's a deal that makes business people very happy, it gives continuity to business, and more than anything, it gives a future to Britain in Europe or outside the EU. So I think that people like Janet who disagree about the deal should forget about delusion of grandeur, should forget about going on your own. You should think this is the deal and you should embrace it for the national interest of Britain.
I'm not the only PK who made you an offer you could refuse with the mafia. This is a new political development on the world stage. There are absolutely sound reasons why people are saying it would be better to stay in, and some of them mean it because they're mischievous and they're actually Remainers and they wanted to stay in anyway. And other people are saying it quite sincerely because what they mean is that there's a basic principle of modern democracy that the legitimacy of the law derives from the consent of the people. And once you remove that principle, once you abrogate that principle, then you're doing something that should be morally repugnant in any free society. And therefore, they're saying, if we stay in without even a voice in making the laws and making the rules and making the regulations, and we accept like a colony or a conquered nation, we accept rules that have been made by other countries, then we are losing the plot in terms of what democratic nations
you are a vassal because you're I am because I'm British now. The European Union was united, the British were disunited. The European Union has all the
It's been going on for 2 years. Can we just talk about right now? The first time we talked about it, I said the grass is very long and that's where we would end up. But I'm not sure that that's going to happen now. I mean, one thing I would say, and I know Janet would appreciate this, is why are we going through this 2-week long show? She's going to have to write a couple of columns. And we all know that when she brings this withdrawal agreement to the Commons, the arithmetic as of today doesn't work. She is going down. Why is it?
That's why the other leaders have decided up here on Saturday that there's going to be no photo. There's going to be no actual because actually they don't want it printed 2 weeks later when the deal's
What I'd like to do is just talk to me. We rarely talk about when we talk about it on the show, which is majorities and majorities. 16 million people voted to remain. 17 million roughly voted to remain. Now, the 16 million had no party. The two major parties, they have no party that is arguing their case in Parliament. And
they do. The Remainers don't have... Oh, no.
No, Janet, listen.
The Remainers within both parties who are arguing straight and doing an enormous amount of
No, I'm saying no. I'm saying the Remainder. What's the Labour Party policy?
Oh, God knows.
This is what I'm saying. Can we talk about the specifics?
You mean the official party line?
The official party line. Exactly. So who represents them? And so now we're going to get to what seems to be inevitable. Just as Julius Caesar was offered the crown 3 times, yesterday, Theresa May was offered the question, will you resign if you don't get it through Parliament? And she declined to answer. We are entering into this new phase over the next 90 days where if the parliamentary arithmetic is correct, and Janet will know because she talks to all these people, then she's not going to get the withdrawal agreement through. Then there's going to be a general election, and then what on earth will happen? And what will the EU 27 do?
There doesn't have to be a general election. There doesn't have to be a general election. There has to be, in theory, a leadership election, although the party could do the same thing and decide by acclamation to appoint a caretaker who will say explicitly, I will not stand at the next general election, but I will see us through this period. That would be the most sane, rational way to approach this.
When has the sane, rational happened in the last few years?
It's the only deal which is on the table.
Yeah, I think as Mark was saying, Britain has effectively been renegotiating its relationship with Europe for centuries, but the myth...
Sometimes with arms and sometimes with pens, yes.
But the myth that the UK can now throw the entire chessboard in the air and go it alone has been exposed, and I think the biggest problem facing Britain at the moment is the vast disconnect between ideology and practical reality. If you strip all the ideology out of Brexit, that is to say the nationalism, the flag waving, the sense of exceptionalism and dare I say entitlement, then you're left with mind-numbing practical problems that will potentially go on for decades if they can be resolved at all. And I think the Brexiteers are more excited by the idea of Brexit than the reality of it. And European politicians actually, slaving over a fiendishly complicated divorce bill this weekend sums up the problems. You have hugely sensitive issues such as Gibraltar and the Irish border, who are the kind who would, require huge amounts of time and energy, and yet they are being tossed into the big Brexit pot.
Hang on.
And that's the problem.
The Irish border problem was actually addressed, something that everybody noticed on Thursday morning and then has got lost in the shuffle. The Irish border problem now, miraculously, the EU has decided could be solved by technological means and trusted trader agreements. This is something they described 5 minutes ago as magical thinking.
Well,
so why do we need
hang on.
So why is the backstop? Sorry, wait, just let me finish.
Very fudgy.
Just let me finish. It is absolutely fudgy. It is absolutely fudgy. That's absolutely right. And there's great heavy weather being made of the fact that the withdrawal agreement still talks about the backstop and puts it into law, although the backstop would be completely unnecessary. The Irish border question, which has been a ridiculous fiction, which has been promoted to the world-stopping event that it has been. If that can be resolved, as everybody who knows about these things says that it can, with technology and trusted trader agreements, the backstop disappears, and the need for us to say in the customs union indefinitely disappears. Now, that is only in the political directive, it's true, which is not legally binding. The withdrawal agreement, this is tedious, I know, but the withdrawal agreement is legally binding, and that still talks about the backstop. So there's now an outright contradiction between the withdrawal agreement, which is legally binding.
No, but this is all,
it's all
the business people, listen to your business people, they say, is this deal
no, some business people.
Can I take you back to the question I asked Mark right at the beginning? It feels like a lifetime ago now. But is this summit a charade if this deal is going to be defeated anywhere?
Sure, of course it is, but it's a charade. The EU is very big on charades. The whole bloody thing is a charade.
Well, the charade was in the UK, sorry. The EU was united, and the UK was the charade.
What is probably going to happen now is a managed no deal. We are going to get no deal, and we are going to come out, and it's going to be much, much less traumatic than everybody has been claiming that it would be. Within 6 months, everything will have settled down.
I'm writing that down on the inside of my palm. And in 6 months, I'm calling up Janet Daly.
Come on.
We will have you all back, I promise you. We will have you all back together at some point, maybe around 6 months, to see if that has come to pass. Now, the US President Donald Trump has concluded it doesn't matter whether or not Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince knew in advance about the plan to murder Jamal Khashoggi. The United States will remain a steadfast partner, he said, regardless. UK officials appeared a bit more embarrassed about their partnership. 200 of the UK military engaged in a joint exercise in Saudi Arabia this weekend. Not that all is well in UK Gulf relations. The British have courted displeasure with their efforts to sponsor a ceasefire in the war being waged in Yemen. On Wednesday, a court in the United Arab Emirates jailed for life a postgraduate student the UAE says is a spy. The British Foreign Secretary warned of serious diplomatic consequences. Nabila, there are signs as the weekend is upon us that the UAE is sending a different signal now about this case. It's possible that this young man could eventually be released, but there does seem to have been real shock at the sentence and a kind of disconnect between what the British were thinking was happening and what actually happened.
Well, this is a horrific story that has captured the imagination of the British audience and public for all the right reasons. And the UAE is currently considering clemency, and there are talks for a presidential pardon. Given the close relationship between the UAE and Britain, I think it's very likely to be granted. But I think that, this is also probably in response to the public outcry, which has been led by the media, of course. But the British government, British diplomats seem to have been taken by surprise by the sentence. And you would have thought that British diplomats would have looked more closely into this case, especially as it involved an alleged British agent being charged for spying.
Is something changing about the relationship between the West and the Gulf states? Because in the past they've been thought of as really close allies. The West not always keen to call out some of the things that are happening something that it might normally not approve of in those countries broadly following a foreign policy line that the West approved of?
I think what all these kind of cases that you've highlighted actually show is the abject amorality of the West's, and including Britain's, relations with super-rich Gulf states. I mean, both parties to this cozy relationship pretend that they can sort problems together and that the petrodollar profits can keep flowing, whatever happens. The truth is that the Gulf states would do whatever they want as long as they remain one of the biggest markets for British arms, and they can assist the West in prosecuting devastating wars against Middle Eastern and North African countries. So due process or any kind of justice actually goes out of the window if countries such as the UAE and Saudi Arabia do what they have in mind. Meanwhile, I have to say, Britain pretends to impose civilized values when in fact the West's entire value system is based on